So for step 3, you officially retire, you begin receiving benefits according to your formula that we just described. And step 4, you enjoy a happy, work-free life with your family. No one gets to tell you what to do anymore. And you also enjoy cost of living adjustments because obviously your pension stipend needs to keep pace with inflation in order to provide a dignified and decent quality of life. For Tier 1 folks, you get a 3% cost of living adjustment every year. For Tier 2, your adjustment, if you have 26 years or more of service, your cost of living adjustment will be either the rate of inflation or 2%, whichever is lower. If you have less than 26 years of service, then your cost of living adjustment is going to be prorated accordingly. And this is the range here. It's between 1.25% to 2%. So this actually goes back to the question that you just asked. This is some research that we did a while ago, comparing a hypothetical of what would have happened, what people would have lost in their pension if Measure B had passed. But this shows you what the total aggregate value of a pension benefit is for an average City of San Jose employee. These numbers were based on what is the current average experience of someone in the City of San Jose. So it assumed someone who worked for about 20 years as a city employee and then retired and received 18 years of benefits. That's the average experience. Used an average local 21 salary. And in total, the benefits that are paid out over the course of their retirement would be about $1.4 million or $1.5 million in total value. So that's something that both you and your employer paid into. It's something you have a vested right to, and it's a huge part of your compensation package, right? It's a significant investment to pre-plan 18 years of your life with a decent salary. But that's what your pension is. So next, we're going to go over the fundamentals of pension accounting and talk about how we make sure that when you retire, you have that $1.5 million that you need for the rest of your life. So we hear a lot of myths about pensions. I think overwhelmingly the things we hear in the media about pensions are negative and deceptive. We hear a lot about how pension debt is preventing governments from providing public services, about how pension debt is massive and it weighs down the entire public sector, about how pensions are unsustainable and pensions are under attack and that those attacks are justified in some way, and that the public should question the existence of pensions. And my hope is that by going through this portion of the presentation, we can start to dispel some of those myths and know what the truth is about pensions and how pensions really work. So just starting with the very basics, this is a snapshot from your last annual financial report for your pension fund in San Jose. Receivables is the amount of money that was coming in. Those are employer and employee contributions. These numbers are in thousands. So that's like $68 million. Total investments at fair market value were $1.9 billion. Liabilities were $15 million. The plan's net position was $1.9 billion. So I wanted to start with this to just say that the fund is not in, there is not chaos happening in the fund right now. But when we talk about pension liabilities and when we talk about the pension fund, we're not usually talking about these numbers. We're talking about future numbers, future projections of what we think we're going to owe and how much money we think we're going to have in the fund. It's something that includes a lot of guesswork, and we're not talking about our current reality. We're talking about hypothetical things that hopefully have some grounding in reality. These are the terms that we're going to go over really quickly. The funded ratio, normal cost, discount rate, unfunded liability, and the annual required contribution. So to start, we'll talk about the funded ratio. This is one of the biggest numbers that you hear thrown around when we're talking about pensions and sort of public forum and public debate, you've probably heard that the pension in San Jose is 54% funded. And that's usually presented as a kind of doomsday scenario. It doesn't sound great when you say that. Honestly, it's not ideal, but I do want to talk about what this really means so that we understand it. When we talk about the funded ratio, what we're saying is that the current assets in your pension fund could pay off 54% of all of the total accrued liabilities of the fund. What that means is that everyone, when I say total accrued liabilities, I mean all of the liabilities that every current employee of the city of San Jose has earned up until this point. I mean, all of this includes all of the benefits that current retirees have accrued but haven't been paid out yet. So the likelihood that every city employee is going to retire tomorrow and try to collect all of their pension benefits is next to nothing, right? This is not something that we have to pay off, that we're going to have to pay off in the immediate future. It's something that the fund has to be able to pay off over time. So this isn't an exact comparison, but I think it's a helpful way to understand this and to think about it. We can compare this to a mortgage, right? When you take out a loan to buy a house, it's not that important that you have all of the money that you would need to pay off your house in your bank account right now. What's more important is that you have a stable income. That means you can make your payments every month. It means that you have a realistic monthly installment that you have to pay. It means that you have a plan to make sure, like your own personal budget, to make sure that you can meet your goals and pay off your mortgage over the next 30 years. Pensions are sort of similar. The only difference is we're not entirely clear on what the total cost of the asset is that we have to pay off in the future. We can just guess, but it's a similar concept. We don't, ideally we'd like to have all of that money on hand right now, but the most important thing is that we have a realistic payment plan to pay off those benefits when they're going to become due. So that's what this is. This is from your most recent actuarial valuation, and it's the city's plan to get to about a 79% funded ratio by 2032. So I show this to emphasize that there is a plan in place right now to improve the funded ratio when we think we need to, and that the city is making payments according to this plan as we speak. So next we're going to talk about normal cost. This is that term that I brought up earlier when we talked about your contribution rates, and I'm going to explain exactly what that means now. So normal cost is the projected cost of providing your future retirement benefits for someone who's a current employee for 1 year. It's a snapshot of the cost of your benefits, future benefits for 1 year. And you actually subtract out a portion that we think will be covered by investment earnings because the market is going to make up some of the total cost of your benefits, hopefully. So whatever is left over that the stock market isn't going to cover, that's your normal cost rate. Now you can imagine, in order to guess what your benefits are going to cost in the future, we have to make a lot of assumptions. We have to make a lot of guesses. That includes guessing how many years you're probably going to work for the city, how old you're probably going to be when you retire, what your final salary is likely to be. So we have to project what we think wage increases will be every year for the next 20, 30 years. We have to project how the stock market is going to do for about 30 years, which, as you can imagine, is pretty hard. As of right now, I don't think we can predict what happens in the stock market next week, but actuaries do their best. We have to make guesses about how long we think you're going to receive retirement benefits. So it's a little morbid, but they have to guess how long they think City of San Jose employees are going to live, and whether or not you'll be married, things like that. So ideally, if we do all of the guesswork right, or your actuaries do all of the guesswork right, normal cost plus the rate of return on investments should equal the total cost of your future retirement benefits for 1 year. And this rate of return on investment is called the discount rate, the projected rate of return on investments. And the discount rate is, it's called a discount rate because it's used to discount the cost of your pension contributions. Now, most Bay Area employers had a discount rate of around 7.5%, and recently CalPERS has been lowering theirs gradually to 7%. And most pension plans are kind of following suit and lowering their discount rate. Here in San Jose, you actually did that earlier than just about anyone else did, and you also lowered your discount rate significantly more than neighboring plans. Right now, the assumed rate of return on your investments is 6.875%. Like I said, most plans are moving to 7 right now. And the reason for that is that the discount rate is not something we just come up with out of thin air. It's based in part on how the fund has performed over time. So if you're historically having a lower rate of return on investments, you have to lower your discount rate to reflect that. And the reason San Jose has a lower discount rate is because, just realistically, your fund has had a lower rate of return on investments compared to other Bay Area pension funds. And so we're going to start talking about what is actually going on and what's causing this. I think there's two reasons. There's two primary reasons here. One is that it is a reality that the fund has just not been managed the way it should have been. Some of it was mismanagement. We need to get better people in there managing retirement investments. But I think the bigger issue is the ratio of active employees to retirees. And we'll talk about what that means in just a second here.